And we're so happy to be here. And I want to start with just wishing those who are suffering well, whether it's an illness of you're in the hospital or you're just not feeling good. And Kenny, we're really happy that you're feeling better. Thank God. We want to wish those who are not feeling well better, and we want to wish those who are suffering all kinds of things that they should just get through this. This is a time of Geulah, and we are confident that that Geulah is going to come, like Rabbi Lookstein said the other night. So I want to start, and we're going to give you the shared collective Kobrin wisdom of 25 years of marriage, and that's about 50, a little less than 50, because we were in Israel a couple of times, Sedarim. And what we want to share with you is how we approach a Seder. I don't know for how many of you this is the first Seder. It's definitely a different Pesach this year than it is for any. Manish Tana is very, very appropriate this year. But I think what we're going to share with you is something that you can immediately apply for Wednesday night and Thursday night. So we start, like any good educators, because the Seder is an educational moment, with goals. And we think about what our goals are. Our goals are number one.
So when we think about planning, just like we hope all of you will, when you think about planning, think about what you hope to get out of the Seder, what you hope to achieve. So for us, being totally honest, our primary is always we want to have fun. We think if everyone at the Seder has fun, they're going to remember it, they're going to want to come back. Having fun is our primary. Our second is obviously to educate. The Seder is meant to be an educational experience. And as part of that, we want them to engage with Torah interactively, right? So this is meant to be an educational moment that is different from all other educational moments, right? The Gemara talks about how they were trying to get the kids to ask because they were trying to do something different. It's an experiential educational moment, and we want our kids and our parents and who's ever with us this year, unfortunately not our parents, and we'll talk a little bit about how we're managing that, to really engage interactively and to really learn and take away something much more broad than perhaps just the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim in its detail. For me, very important to eat food. Very important to eat yummy food. What you see on the right is our froggy meringues. We got one live here for you.
Not live.
Yes,
live.
Not live. So very important to me that we yummy and engaging and interesting food. We really want to pass on something to which we want our family to return. That's really, really significant. And the last piece for us is to create memories. But again, you might not want all of these goals. You might have others. Thinking about your goals is a great way to begin thinking about what you're going to do and what you're going to prepare.
So what's the first thing to think about as you think about what those goals are? How people teach and how people learn. And remember, the whole idea of the Seder is that you're going to teach your children, you're going to tell your child the story. And we want to think about Chanoch Lana'ar al pi darko. We want to find each, not just the Na'ar, not just the kids, but each person learns in a different way. And the end of that pasuk in Mishlei says, Gam ki yazkin lo yasur mimena. When they get old, they won't forget it. And that's the memories that Michelle was talking about. So there are different ways of learning. We're not just talking about school where the teacher talks and we write it down and we listen. There's an oral transmission, but oral doesn't just mean talking. It also means singing. So when I hear the Die, Enu song, I feel something. There's a connection that happens for me. I know that the meal is about 7 minutes away. So I get excited. It's a fun tune. I learn by tactilely. I learn by dipping. I learn by, we'll talk about costumes and things that you get dressed up in. There's different ways that are not just listening and absorbing. I learn visually. We're going to talk about, it could be, you have here an example of someone's gefilte fish crossing the sea platter. What we see stimulates our brain in totally different ways than what we hear and what we're thinking about. We'll talk about activity and moving around, because if all you do is sit for 2, 3, however many hours, your blood sugar is going to go down, and we want to learn by doing. And finally comes the brain piece, the intellect piece.
Right. What we have behind us actually is something we did for a couple of years. This is a fish net, but you can make it out of string. And we hung fish nets around our dining room, and we tucked some fish into it. There's some fruit tucked into it because the Midrash says when the Jews walked through Yam Suf that there was fruit trees for them to grab. We put some rechush, some necklaces from the dress-up box in it because the Jews left the rechush gadol. So this is just an example of something we do to stimulate sort of oral, tactical, sensory, visual senses as we're planning for our Seder.
Okay, what makes it easy to learn and what makes it challenging or difficult to learn. So that's important to think about.
Jeff always taught me that this is really important to think about. What are the barriers to learning and what lowers those barriers? So when I am hungry, I cannot learn. One of the things, the few things our kids are liking about being home online is they get to nosh all day, right?
Not just the kids.
Not just the kids, unfortunately. What makes it easy? When I'm having fun. We all learn better, grown-ups, kids, when we're having fun. What makes learning hard? When I feel tired, when I'm bored. But what makes it easy is when I'm laughing and when I'm physically comfortable. Maybe that's the original leaning reasons with those pillows. What makes learning hard is when I feel embarrassed, when I feel I'm going to be challenged. Maybe I'm not as comfortable with the Hebrew. Maybe I don't think I have the right Divrei Torah. I didn't get them exactly right. But what makes it easy is when I feel supported, when I feel relaxed, when I feel like I'm going to be praised and rewarded for even my participation or for putting myself out there, right? That's something that makes it easier for me to learn. What makes it hard is when I feel a lot of pressure to perform. And we were once, Jeff always points this out to me, we're at a Seder where someone took a little kid and put that little kid up on a chair to sing the Manishtana. We've all been there.
And he choked.
That little, and it became like a disaster, right? That's not what we're aiming for.
That's not
here.
Learning.
That's not a way. In our house, praise for participation. Everyone 3 to 103 is into chocolate. There's a lot of chocolate and candy.
Okay. Key Kobrin Seder planning principle is that the Seder does not begin when the Seder begins. It begins way before the Seder begins. And this year, the silver lining to us being stuck at home is that we're at home and we have time in our homes to prepare. We have Sunday and Monday and Tuesday and all day, most of the day Wednesday, to get ready. And I would use each of those days. I'm not just talking about the cooking and the cleaning, because that we got to do anyway, but the preparation. So that could be that you're going over the story, hopefully in a book and not on a video. If you're a video person, I think we've had enough screens if you're like me for the time being. But if you really want to go in that direction, you can watch the Prince of Egypt again. I would like to show my kids pieces of the 10 Commandments because in my mind, that's the way that story took place. But it's hard to sit through that whole movie because it's a really long movie. But nonetheless, that also informs the way we see it. The more physical and the more, again, kinesthetically involved people are, the better we're all going to feel. So I would do a lot of things, whether it's chopping charoset or hanging things up. Here you have a picture of our family decorating our dining room. We're going to show you some more. This is the before pictures. We're going to show you some after pictures. That blue painter's tape here. I know you don't want to go out shopping, but if you're going to go to the hardware store, buy a roll or two of this because it will not damage your paint. I'm not guaranteeing that, but we've had good experience with it. And you can basically stick anything up for the 2 days that you need to stick it up.
And I would say this year we talked about more than ever the preparing before. So if we're going to have the kids, some kid likes to write a play, that kid's going to write a play. Some kid wants to make a song. This is a Lego crocodile. Some kid likes to build Lego. The more we do before, the easier it is to share with our family. And
the more they do, the more ownership, the more ba'alut they will feel during the Seder itself. So it's not like the caterer is putting it out for you and you are passively experiencing it or eating it or absorbing it, but you made this happen and it works. It works. So let's see what we got. You have a physical space that you can work with.
Right. So this is a picture of some hieroglyphics that we took big butcher block paper. You can take lots of pieces of computer paper if you haven't used it all, printing out your kids' homework, tape them together. There are tons. If you Google like Pharaoh, Egypt, you'll see tons of good templates. You can't see it, but there's a camel on the fireplace there who someone put a little cartoon coming out of his mouth. We really think that changing around what the physical space looks like is pretty significant for our family. So there are other, here's we cut out templates of pyramids. You can put Playmobil or Lego on the table. You can decorate like you're in Egypt or crossing the sea. Imagine you're physically going through the sea. Imagine you're in Egypt.
This was a school project one year, but you could do this.
This is 2 pieces of paper. The kid liked fish, stuff with newspaper, stapled. There's her name. You could stick it on the wall, right? Fish as you go through it.
Some kids are word kids and some kids are picture kids. And if they want to put freedom, or they want to put a picture of Abraham Lincoln, or they want to cut it out of print it out or whatever it is, let them go with it and use that blue painter's tape and go crazy. If they're into Marvel Comics, and they want to make Thanos into Paro and Captain America into Moshe, that's great. If they're into Peppa Pig, I know very little about Peppa Pig, but if that's their thing, Peppa Pig it up.
One year we printed out the old "Let My People Go" Soviet Union signs.
Yeah,
that was
awesome.
we sort of did a protest, right? Like different ways to think about it.
Okay, this is we'll show you. We'll see.
We're gonna make you watch our home movie now. This is from a couple years ago.
Wait, sorry.
This was the table. The kids giving the tour of the table. I'll try to narrate if you can here.
This is our Seder table. We open on Mitzrayim, a little scene there of Batya saving Moshe. The pyramid. The Mitzvahs are chasing these people, the Jews here, who are running down through the ocean. We have trees in the ocean, so we dressed up with there was trees in the ocean as we went. And there's Moshe all the way at the end in Eretz Israel with the arms around Okay, now go back up.
Okay, what you missed was the kids remembered that the Jews took Atzmot Yosef with them when they took Yosef's body with them to bury. So they made a whole thing with Yosef and being carried out. Those are the Israeli flags they give you at the end of the parade. And they put that down the middle of the table. No flowers necessary.
I would humble brag that this we did in Florida one year, and we took a suitcase full of Seder stuff with us in addition to all the flip-flops and everything else. But that was the Seder table that we were able to create. Here are some examples of things that we cooked and made. That's a frog.
Made out of a cantaloupe, very easy to do.
And on the right side, you have our famous crossing the sea cake, which is 2 manischewitz, or one broken half. I don't know.
I think it's 2. This one's 2.
I would eat those cakes year round if they let me.
The coffee one.
The coffee cake. We'll talk about that a different time about favorite Pesach foods, and then we put people and they were crossing through.
Right, and some jellyfish. Here's another table where we tried to twist some blue fabric. You can do it with blue paper just to make some waves around. And these are peppers cut into frogs. I think we used radishes and blueberries for the X.
But don't limit your canvas is not only your table, like we showed you before. One year we were home, so we had our living room was the Egypt experience, and then that's the picture you have on the left. And then when you entered the dining room, that was the crossing the sea. That was the Yetziat Mitzrayim Yam Suf. That's what you see on the right side.
And that's that whale was a big blow-up toy the kids had.
We'll show you a bigger shot of that in a minute. And then when you went through to the last room, we have a kids' playroom. On the other side of the dining room, that was Eretz Yisrael. So you have and Matan Torah. So we have the Israeli flag hanging there.
Right, can you just go back? I just want the two quick notes for this year. We hung jellyfish, which had an amazing visual effect. Very easy to make out of just paper plates and anything stringy ribbon that you have, tissue paper. And then at the end, we put
you can see it better.
The Ananei Kavod and
yeah, there's a better there. Okay. I'll show you in a minute. Oops, sorry. And there we go. This is what we did for the Mitzrayim section. We had another stereotypical Egyptian on butcher paper, and then this is actually a very precious commodity now. I don't know that I would use it this week. That's toilet paper, actually wrapped around a dressmaker's dummy. You could use newspaper too.
Sheets. Less precious than your toilet paper right now.
But that was the Egypt room of that experience, and this is the final wide shot. This is what the dining room looked like. They're all the fish. In the back right corner, you can see the Ananei HaKavod that were balloons that we blew up. You can just use white balloons or white crumpled up piece of paper or pillows or anything. I think of that scene in Apollo 13 where they had the capsule was stuck orbiting the Earth, and I think it was Ed Harris comes and they shake out a big box of all the stuff they had in the lunar lander or whatever, and he said, "Or we got to get them down using this stuff." So look through your apartment, look through your house, see what you got, shake it all out on the table, and this is what I'm going to use to make the Seder, and I guarantee it will be creative and amazing. Okay, now let's talk about the day itself.
Okay, so people who are hungry and tired are not going to do well. You have to nap, or you have to make sure everyone's really well rested from the night before. There is a Kobrin family tradition to make everyone take a nap.
That's mine.
The night of the Seder.
I brought that to
Today it's going to be, this year it's going to be a little tricky. We'll talk more about this, but our plan is to do a full family Zoom Seder from 4 to 7. So we're going to be showered, dressed, and ready to go, including eating the meal I normally serve everyone at 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock, everyone gets chicken and potatoes, because we find if we do not feed everyone a real meal at 10:30, when we're up to Shulchan Orech, everyone is a disaster.
Yes.
The Kobrins get hangry. We're going to try something new this year. We decided to try a Karpas Fest, a dipping course. So we're gonna try celery and some hazelnut butter that I bought, berries and chocolate, carrots and pesto. We thought that would really get people thinking about the dipping and what that's about, and beginning to think about that.
That tactile piece of it.
Right. We always do plague-related stuff. The froggy meringues, again, here they are, froggy meringues.
Delicious.
We do plastic cups with red jello with jellyfish in them. We do ripe French macaroons with some raspberry in them for barad, right? The idea that the flame was surrounded by the hail. Pyramids out of toothpicks and marshmallows.
Yeah,
so
I got a picture of that.
Great activity when some kids are bored and or want a snack and you want to keep them busy. Little toothpicks, mini marshmallows, see how big a pyramid they can make.
Sugar, candy.
Mm-hmm.
If you're fancy and you only eat chocolate, fancy adults eat fancy chocolate, that's fine.
There's not a lot of soda in the Kobrin family, but at the Seder, there's soda. Correct. Like the caffeine keeps everyone going and a little bit happier.
Okay. Another very important principle that we have embraced is that the Seder is never going to look like the Norman Rockwell version of the Seder that you have in your head. And imperfect is not just good enough, it's perfect itself. And if you can't do the whole Seder at night because it's late, that's okay. You have tomorrow lunch to work on. So you can, and this year we actually have 3 days. So you can spread it over 6 meals instead of 4. And if you don't get to Chad Gadya and the little kids fall asleep and you sing Chad Gadya at lunch the next day, that's okay.
We usually have them spread their Divrei Torah over all 4 meals. We sing the songs more than once.
If people can't handle the Hebrew, even if it's a kid that you paid XD thousands of dollars for them to learn Hebrew in the school that they're in, and they want to do it in English, you're still Yotzei the mitzvah of Sipur Yetziat Mitzrayim if you do it in English. And that, again, that you don't want to impede the learning. If you have a kid who just got back from Israel and wants to tell one of these 15-minute shiurim with a machloket of the Shev Shmeitza and the Tosfot and everything like that, that's great. Remember that there's a 3-minute cutoff.
And that's when you break out a little Lego packet you made. You tell a kid to build a pyramid, to build a crocodile, to build any plague, to make your pyramid out of marshmallows. Keep them busy.
That's for the candy.
Or they can get up and go prepare something. Go prepare the dipping course, right? It doesn't have to be perfect.
Someone asked me last night, what do you do when you have a Seder? I have a 16-year-old and a 10-year-old and a 4-year-old. And that's like trying to find a movie that they're all going to agree on. You can't. And that's okay. So everyone gets their moment and everyone is respectful of the other person's moment.
Something Jeff has shown me is really empowering each of our kids to take some time to lead at the Seder.
Yep.
So it doesn't become only one leader. Jeff's always, he's good with pacing, keeping everyone going, but really empowers each child. And when we're lucky enough to have our folks with us, each parent to have their moment when they're in charge of what will happen next.
So the leader says, okay, now it's your turn to read. We're on page 14. Whatever the person is keeping pace and knowing that you're 3 pages away from taking the wine out for the Den Makot is an important role. Let's talk about memory, because what the Seder is about our collective memory as a people, right? We're telling the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim, but it's also about the stories that each of us tell. And it's all about story. I mean, I literally did a PhD on that. That was a little self-plug. But it's about the stories that we tell. So what we do is we write little questions and we sneak them. Well, it's not even sneaking. We put them under people's plates. This is for use when there's a boring moment or there's a down moment, or save it for Shulchan Orech after people have had their soup or their hard-boiled egg or their main, and you want to keep the conversation going, and people are less anxious because they have food in them. So some of the questions were things like, what's your favorite Seder song and why? What was a redemption that you experienced? You'd be surprised what a 7-year-old will tell you when you ask her that question. What's your favorite Pesach food and why? It could be like, that's my coffee cake is definitely my answer. For somebody, it's their grandmother's brisket. For somebody else, it's a different thing. What are 4 questions that you have? I know nowadays many of us have many, many questions. I'm not talking about existential ones, but Seder questions that you have. This question, when we asked this once, when we had a member of the family over who we knew pretty well, and we said, what's your favorite childhood Seder memory? We got a story that we'd never heard before, and everyone at the table just locked in. And we never forgot that moment. So that's an
And that was
incredible
a
question.
person who had been pretty quiet in our Seder until
Correct.
that point. And we turned to them and we're like, oh, pick up your plate. They didn't know it was there because we put it out when we set the table, right? And they were able to really fully engage without feeling pressure to be in the text of the Haggadah or with the Hebrew. It was pretty amazing.
Right. If you were making the movie, who would you cast? I would put Charlton Heston as Moshe, but again, that's I'm been trained that way. What would you replace matzah with if you had to do something else? What makes you feel scared? That's actually an easy question to answer. Right now, if you were a reporter covering Makat Choshech or Yetziat Mitzrayim, act it out. Put on a show.
Kids love that one.
That's a good one. Like, I think of Kermit the Frog, the reporter. What do you think of as a plague? That's, again, too easy a question. Which superhero is like Moshe? Which superhero is like Aharon? Which supervillain is like the Khartoumim, the advisors to Paro?
Who's most like Miriam?
Right. What was a journey that our family took? That could be the time we drove to South Carolina. That could be the time that great-grandpa left Latvia and came to America. It's a different story for everybody, but the goal is to get people to tell their own stories.
Jeff and I were talking about this. All the studies about what builds resilience in families and in kids really talk about families where there's a narrative, not when everything was great or everything was bad, but there's an oscillating narrative. Things were good and they were bad, and then they got better and then they were bad again. That narrative, kids being attached to that family narrative, that's what builds grit and resilience. And that is the story of the Seder, right? That's the story that we're reading. Arami Oved Avi and Halach Ma'anya and Avadim Hayinu. And then it gets better. And then there's still questionable moments. And this year of all years, trying to connect with that. And we're going to talk about how we're going to use those questions and how we're going to connect with other generations in a year when that's pretty challenging for us.
But first, if you just sit, like I said before, let's do it. Okay.
Let's do it.
So 1 year, this doesn't happen. We're professionals. So we have professional.
Don't try this at home, my friends.
Professional
you should
level
try this at home.
Costumery. But 1 year we were away. We were in a southern location, and I ran into the other room, and I came back in an inner tube with a snorkel, and I said, "Who am I?" And they correctly guessed that I was Nachshon ben Aminadab.
So for paper bag dramatics, collect a bag of any random thing you have in the house, put it somewhere, ask them to play charades with it. Anything you can find.
If you have a real baby in your family, then make that baby boy or girl into baby Moshe and tell the story with him or her. When we get to Dayenu, we don't just sit there, we dance. In fact, 1 year we actually danced across the street to the neighbor's house, who were not sure what to make of that, but it was good for us because when you get moving.
In terms of costumes, I just want to say this is Egyptian collar. You put it on, you're an Egyptian. You can make this out of paper at home. Robes. There's always someone with sheet tied around their head as the Israelites. We really try hard to find whatever we can to get folks to dress up.
Talk about leaning yoga.
Okay. So you have to move. You cannot sit for that many hours, and your kids for sure cannot sit for that many hours. And when you're fighting the idea that everyone should be sitting, because in the perfect piece in your head, everyone is sitting calmly around the table. So let's do chair yoga. Everyone see how far you can lean. Take that leaning as far as you can. 1 year, remember with the sheets, we decorated sheets. A lot gets damaged, hurt in the process of our Seder.
Used.
Repurposed. We had the kids use markers on the sheets beforehand, and then we cut it in half, and we were flipping it like it was the sea. And the Egyptians were chasing them, and they ran around the house like maniacs, and then they got their when headbands
was the hot game and all our kids were playing it, headbands where you wear a band around your head, which you can make easily, and they put a little card that only the other people can see, and you have to guess what it says by the clues that they give you. So that we did Pesach headbands 1 year. Very important to remember that there's a 3-minute attention span. No matter how old you are or what the brilliance of your Dvar Torah, 3 minutes. You could put a little kid in charge of timing the 3 minutes. As much singing as possible. And remember that Hallel, there's a section of the Seder called Hallel, which is after Birkat HaMazon, but Hallel really starts before. At the end of Magid, sing, sing, sing. We had a friend 1 year who actually made an escape room. That was last year.
That was great.
We did it during Magid. That was off the charts, crazy, amazing. That's just an idea.
You can totally Google how to do an escape room. You can do a scavenger hunt. 1 year we had everyone look for Rachush. We took the money out of a game. We put it out. We found all their little guys. We had them hide and find them or make them attack someone. That worked for some kids.
We asked them we took picture cards from games and said, what does this remind you of? How does this connect to the story of Pesach? Anything that will stimulate a conversation. and
But remember,
more
people have to
storytelling.
move. That's our pyramid up there made out of
Yeah, there's your
marshmallows
marshmallow
in the corner. The kids have to move. You, the adults, have to move. It's too much. Too much. Can I take this off?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're gonna de-costume.
Okay.
You have to decide, you want everyone on the same page literally, and you want to use the same Haggadah for everybody, or you want to use different Haggadot. I like different ones because it gives different ideas. You have to wait then for everyone to catch up. And so a couple that we saw that this is Rabbi Rosenberg, who I believe is a Ramaz alumnus, Rabbi Moshe Rosenberg's Hogwarts Haggadah, which we enjoyed very, very much. My friend Jordan Gorfinkel's graphic novel Haggadah, which came out last year, which is really, really, really cool. I was less impressed with not impressed. I thought I would enjoy that new American Haggadah more than I did, but it was very good. Well, I laughed out loud at Adam Mansbach and Dave Barry's for this. For this, we left Egypt, although it's not as traditional a Haggadah as one might want.
My favorite Haggadah is the one by Noam and Michael Zion. What's it called?
A different night.
A different night. So I saw that just today they sent around an email with a downloadable PDF just for this year if you have coronavirus issues and can't buy it. So that's available, and then you should buy it next year so that they, get what they deserve.
I love Rabbi Mirsky's Haggadah. I use it in Hebrew, the Higyonei Halacha Haggadah. I know that Kobrin just came out with this youth Haggadah, which is parallel to the Sidur that a lot of our kids use in whatever school that they're in. And Rav Rimon, who's the Rav of Alon Shvut, came up with this Haggadah for Pesach also. So these are just some of the things. Now let's talk about this year, because this year obviously is nishtana from all the other years.
So we really didn't feel that we could spend a real Seder without our folks. So we are doing a full family Seder right before Yom Tov starts, right before candlelighting. But in order to do that, we're going to have to really start getting ready on Tuesday, right? Because of the timing and the last minute nature. And we're going to, I know it's going to be exciting. And we really intend to be dressed and ready to go at 4. And there'll be a meal component to that, just like I said. Those plate questions that I told you we put under everyone's plate that Jeff was talking about, the ones that engage memory, I plan to distribute them both to our own immediate family and to the rest of our family earlier in the week on Sunday, I hope, and have them write their answers, and we'll write our own answers and then exchange them, and then we can read them at the Seder as a way of really keeping them close. There's you want to talk about this one?
Mm-hmm.
There's a Kobrin family activity that we do every year at the meal before Yom Kippur. We write a letter to ourselves to the next Erev Yom Kippur, and we open the one from the year before. It seemed like a year to steal that. We're going to write a note to ourselves to next year's Seder. We're going to spend a little bit of time doing that.
To the Tufshin Ayin Aleph version of ourselves. I want to think about empathy and empathy in stories. And so how do you think Paro felt? Is he just the bad guy? Is it black and white? Or maybe he was stuck and he couldn't get out of it. How do you think his magicians, his advisors felt? How do you think Yocheved felt when she had to put her baby in a basket and put him in the river? Empathy is key, and we thought about Natan Sharansky, whose video has been making the rounds, because he certainly knew what it was like to have curtailed freedom. How does one develop empathy?
Right, and Jeff and I were talking about the Midrash that says, right, the reason we don't say Hallel Shalem, a complete Hallel, for all of Pesach, we don't say it for the last 6 days, is because God recognized, right, that the Egyptians died in Yam Suf, right? And he turned to his angels who were singing, and he said, how can you sing when my creations are... So you can't sing if my creations are dying, and there's certainly death that we're aware of now. We should be learn from that. Right. So the real feeling of empathy, we're all feeling a little bit sorry for ourselves, but really reflecting much on the more broad picture here and what empathetic lessons we can take out. So I'd say resilience and empathy, those are going to be sort of our two motivating modalities this year. Oh, okay. So I hope the grandpas aren't watching. I think one of them might be. The grandpas have dueling charoset recipes. So whoever's with us, that's the one who makes the charoset. So this year, on Monday or Tuesday before, we will have the kids make via FaceTime charoset with that grandpa. And then we will be so lucky, both grandpas, to have both sets of charoset with them. We might try a little bit of matzah brei practice with the grandmas as well. Things that we're going to have push our kids to do stuff that they might not They sometimes prepare some of it. We're going to have them prepare a lot of it. If your kid is into writing skits, let them write skits. If they're into music, let them write a piece of music. If they're into building with Lego, let them build with Lego. Whatever, if they have, you know, what's that called? Keflak? What's those bricks called that we have? Anyway, if they're into anything, they're into building, making, there's a great comic book app called Comic Book Life. If they want to make a comic book for the Seder beforehand, we're going to have them do as much beforehand as possible so we can share that with the grandparents to print out.
Someone talked about printing out the kids' faces and making a little mini ideal Seder on the grandparents' faces on the table. I personally think that's a little weird.
Someone had that idea and someone else thought that was creepy.
I thought it was creepy. I thought it was really creepy. If you
want to write a nice idea.
It's weird. Whatever. You do what you want. You know, we're just throwing stuff at the wall and see what sticks. You want to write a word, a song for Pesach, take a song that everyone knows, a Gilbert and Sullivan song, a Beatles song, a popular song, a Jewish song, and Pesach it up.
And online you can find Pesach Jeopardy, you can find Pesach songs, you can find all of that stuff.
And that's it. We want to wish you all Chag Kasher V'Sameach, a healthy and a happy and a meaningful holiday with your families. This is a Seder that can be done and can be unforgettable. I'm going to look in the Q&A now. I see that, hi Leo.
Hi. When you finish that one, I actually have a great question for you that I'd love to get your opinions on. So you can look at the one in the Q&A.
Said at 7:02 that he can't hear anything, so I hope by now he can. Joanna wants to know about handling the scarier parts of the story for younger kids. I would downplay them and not talk about blood and not talk about death and not talk about, because they don't need to know about every single part of the story at every single part of their lives. You can say that bad things happened to and the Jews were able to go. It's okay to gloss over pieces of the story at age appropriate levels.
Right. I would say that I would add to that the notion of Leil Shimurim, of a night of protection, is really resonating with me this year. The wish of a blessing of night and nights of protection, and I could see us doubling down on that, and maybe
right.
You know, for us finding some more sources on that than we typically would. And this is part of spreading stuff over for meals. So if you put the little kids to sleep at a certain point, or if they fall asleep, that's a great time to engage with your teenagers who really want to talk about, right? To like pretend bad stuff didn't happen is not going to work either. But if you imagine you're spreading your Seder over all of the first days of Yontif, you have more elbow room to have those individualized conversations.
So just very quickly, because this came to me while you were talking earlier. I have two sisters, and it just so happens that every time we get to the four sons, me and my two sisters, we all seem to get the same parts. I, as the eldest, always get the wise one. My middle sister happens to always get the Rasha, and my youngest sister happens to get the one who doesn't know. So my question is, how would you... Is there a better way to explain the four sons without calling one a good one and a bad one, than a one who's stupid, which is not what we call them, obviously, but for kids, when we were younger, sometimes those words would come out, feelings would be hurt, and all of that sort of stuff. And so we always would say, no, don't worry. But it just so happened that every year it fell out the exact same way.
I thought you were going to ask, why is it boys and not girls? Because we have four daughters, and that always seems to come up. But no, I always like to think every single person in moments of their life is Eino Yodei Lishol, and is Tom, and sometimes it's Rasha, not Michelle, but other people, and it's Chacham. We all have these different aspects to our personality. And to look at anybody as just one slice of who they are, I think is too limited. And
Jeff does this thing.
That's the empathy piece again.
Jeff does this thing at our Shabbat table every week, which also works for 4 to 104, which is he asks everyone to find something that inspired them that week. So it works if you have a lot of backgrounds. It works if you doesn't. So I remember one year he turned to the kids and asked them to identify moments over the year when they had been each of those four children. And that really made them dig a little deep.
That was intense.
Right. That was a kind of intense. It went really well. That's another good question to ask the grown-ups. What were times that you were wise and times that you really didn't know what to ask? And that actually worked great. I will say we've paper bag dramatic this with younger kids. So we send someone in, not the expected one, right? You know, we send someone in and ask them to, you know, come back as whatever kid you think you are, and we're going to try to guess who you are, that kind of thing.
We are not going to, someone asked, are we going to make brachot at that early Seder? Not Baruch, no.
But we're going to read the whole text of, we're going to get through a lot of the text of that Seder.
We're going to get through as much of the Seder as we can without the brachot, because it's not the official Seder. You can't make a brei priagafen or whatever. You can't do the brachot because it's not the actual Seder.
But we do want to sing Who Knows One. There's a huge Chad Gadya, we sing with animal noises, and like we want to do that with our family and don't want to miss that.
Abby Zausmer-Weiss, who I know professionally and personally, asks, and you're welcome. She said, that's a little North Shore plug. She wants guidance introducing the Zoom Seder to the kids. I don't think I think the kids are really more familiar with Zoom at this point than their grandparents probably are. So I would just say, okay, we're going to now Zoom with Grandma and Grandpa, with Bubby and Zadie, with Saba and Safta, and we're going to do this Seder with them the same way you've been Zooming with Morziva all week. And we're going to try to do the Seder that way. And we know this is a different Seder than it usually is. And God willing, next year, we're all going to be together again. So I don't know that it needs more of a deeper introduction than that. Mara, it's nice to see you also.
And I think it's also, we're really trying to reflect a lot of values to our kids this year that are bumping up against each other, right? The value of staying safe is really, really bumping up at a very deeply held value of being with our parents. And everyone I know is struggling with the notion that we will be separate as families, right? That feels very, very, very deeply complicated. But we know the value of Shmartem Uda Nashotechem and is the ultimate value in Jewish life. So I actually think that's a lesson you can explain both at a very high level, not a very, you know, simple level to kids, but recognizing that our values are in tremendous conflict this time of year is I think something that we want to share openly.
And we'll get through this. And the Sederim can be beautiful. And they will be different than any other. I guarantee you'll remember this Pesach for the rest of your life, but you want to remember it not just because, oh my God, you want to remember it because it was amazing. And it really can be amazing. I did a version of this last night for North Shore, and a parent spoke to me afterwards, and he said, I'm finally free of all the cousins and all the competition, and it's just me and my kids, and he's looking forward to that.
And it's okay to celebrate that part too, and know that, please God, next year you'll go back to it. I saw Rabbanit Esti Rosenberg-Lichtenstein, who's the Rosh Yeshiva of Migdal Oz, sent out a message of chizuk to her students, many of whom are alone with just their new husbands, right, this particular year. And she said, like, you should go back to the Seder of 20, but you should really try to find, and she quoted a Mishnah that talks about how the Shekhinah comes to your table as long as there are words of Torah between you, even if you're by yourself. And the idea of welcoming in the Shekhinah and what it looks like to do that when we're in a very different setting is actually something, it's a challenge, but it's a good spiritual challenge, I think.
And that's it. Rami Metal, it's great to see you also, if only in a line form. That's all we got.
Rabbi Jeffrey and Michelle,
Hey,
you are even better than anyone could have expected. In person, you're great. On Zoom, you're spectacular. And this was a real treat for any of us that got to be part of it. And we can't wait. We're sending this out far and wide. I think you should start a program after this is all over, the Jeff and Michelle show, because the two of you, when you work together on something, there ain't any stopping you, that's for sure. Thank you so much for enhancing all of our...
The process is a little messy.
We love you. We love you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely evening. Shabbat Shalom and Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach.